just kind of standard. Okay, so now we've got our database connected and we're talking to it. So the next thing we're going to pay attention to is how we handle HTTP requests. So the recommended way to do this on App Engine, we're going to take advantage of an App Engine service that basically an infrastructure for supporting highly scalable HTTP requests called the URL fetch service. So this is the recommended way to do it. And it's very transparent because you just use it via HTTP stream wrappers and the functions that you're used to calling like file get contents. So in a few places in the joined in code then we're going to replace calls to fsoc open with file get contents like this. So here we're making a post request to defensio.com using file get contents. Okay. All right, so next let's talk about caching. And we actually have several options here. What are those options, Mandy?
So I mentioned Google front ends earlier. So we have the Google front ends where it's pretty much the entry point for anybody accessing your service or your application. And that has the ability to cache data for you. So static content or dynamic requests that have cache control headers set on them can be cached in the Google front end. It's a big global resource. And also we have some peering relationships with ISPs that allow us to cache data very, very close to the user. So you can take advantage of that. So that's really important. Set the caching up and you can prevent many of these requests from actually hitting App Engine at all. And then when it comes to data, we have Memcache. Memcache, we're going to talk about in more detail, but it's a massive scalable service. It's a distributed service that's available to all of the apps in App Engine. And so eviction can be not necessarily caused by your own application, but can be caused by somebody else's. But it's still huge, and it still gives you huge benefits. But if that's not enough for you, we also have a dedicated Memcache service, which has just gone into GA. And that's available and allows you to reserve space in Memcache by the gigabyte. The cost, it's a paid service, but it allows you to actually have your own scalable Memcache service available to you.
Okay, so for joined in, it does some caching to the local file system. And again, App Engine doesn't allow writes to the local file system. So in those cases, we're going to instead just use Memcache. And this works just out of the box with App Engine. There's nothing you need to do at all to configure it. And here's an example of how you do it. Here we're generating, essentially using the cache path that we're generating as the key, and we're setting the expiration to be 60 seconds. And this is all you need to do to use Memcache. Okay, so got caching under control now. Let's next look at how we're going to upload media files. So, images for an event as you're configuring for a new event. So how are we going to do this? And again, we can't write to the local file system. What we're going to do instead is use cloud storage, which Mandy also mentioned earlier. So this is, again, part of the Google Cloud Platform suite of technologies. And this is an object store, distributed really fast and scalable. Lets you store huge amounts of data if you want to. So we're going to use cloud storage for our media uploads. And App Engine actually makes it super easy to do that. But first, let's talk about how you set things up on the project end. What you need to do is define a bucket that you're going to use for your app. So this is a screenshot of the web UI of a particular bucket in cloud storage. You access this through your project cloud console. So we've defined a bucket. And then kind of similarly to Cloud SQL, we need to configure our App Engine app to be able to talk to it. So again, this is spelled out in the documentation, but essentially what you need to do is every App Engine app has a so-called service account email, and you need to add that service account email to the permissions of your project, the project in which you've defined your bucket. And once you do that, App Engine app communicates with your cloud storage bucket without any other configuration required. So here's a look at what the code be to do that. There's some helper functions that make this really straightforward. And the key one is create upload URL. So we're calling this method, and we're passing it the name of the bucket that we want to write to, and then we're passing it what essentially is a callback URL. And this is the event/edit URL. This is going to be called as a post request after the file uploads with the file information. So create upload URL generates a URL. We use that URL as the action of our form post, and then when the upload completes, this callback URL is called as a post request, and from the file's superglobal, you can grab the temporary name in your cloud storage bucket of where the file was uploaded. And once you have that temporary file name, then you can do whatever you want with it. And we provide stream wrappers for cloud storage. So all of your familiar file system functions just work as you would expect. So here we're doing a rename of the temporary file to the file where we really want to put the upload. And one sort of interesting thing we're doing here is when we do that, we're saying that the file is publicly accessible. That's what the ACL key is doing there. So if you don't say that, then the permissions of the file are set so that only the App Engine app can access it. So here we're setting this upload to be publicly accessible. And then we're using one more helper function, and this is actually new to App Engine 1.8.8, which just came out a couple days ago. So this is kind of a nice little helper function. You can generate a public URL really easily. You used to sort of have to piece it together by hand. So now we make it really easy to do that. And once you have that public URL, you can use it in your page renderings or use it however you like. Okay, so again, stream wrappers to make all the familiar file system calls map very transparently to cloud storage. Okay, so there's one more thing that we need to pay attention to as we convert our app. And this is sending email. So if we try to send email, we get this error. What we're going to do to fix that is we're going to use App Engine's Mail API. And it's really straightforward to use. Essentially, all you do is you create an array that contains the information about the message you want to send, the to, the subject, etc., the body. And you create a new message object, and you just call send. So that's sort of the core use of the Mail API. But let's do something a little more interesting here that takes advantage of what's actually one of my favorite App Engine features. And as Mandy sort of alluded to earlier, I could talk all day on this, but I won't. And that is task queues. Okay, so say we want to send a whole bunch of emails at once. And if you did that, that would be slow. And so what you would like to do is you would like to be able to sort of decouple things that are slow from the app's request response, the client request response cycle, and push stuff like that into the background where you can do it asynchronously. So App Engine has a service called task queues, which makes this really easy to do. And here's a figure of that. We're essentially going to send these emails, this bunch of emails that we need to send. We're going to send them in the background, decoupled from our client request response cycle. So what would that look like? For each email that we want to send, we're going to define a task queue task. These are essentially just units of work. And so we're going to define a new push task. We're going to pass it the worker URL, tasks email, and pass it an optional array of parameters. And then we're just going to add it to App Engine's task queue. Here we're using the default queue. You can also define other queues and name them and give them different configuration characteristics. Okay, so we're defining a task. for each email we want to send, we're adding them to the task queue, and then they run in the background asynchronously. So the next piece of the puzzle is, well, how exactly do they run? These are just, you already know how to write tasks. These are just request handlers like any other request handler. So we're defining a mapping in the app.yaml from tasks email to the email.php script that implements this task. And then here's the task handler itself. And it's just run as a post request. So, so we're actually checking first to ensure that it's running as a task, in case we don't want the script to run in any other context. And then we're just treating as we would any other post request. We're grabbing the task payload, the task parameters from the post array, and then we're just sending the message. And that's all there is to it. It's really nice and powerful. Okay. So where have we got to, Mandy?
Okay, so what we've basically shown here is that that's what you need to do to get joined in running. So at this point, you're going to want to click through everything. You're going to want to test all of the functions, various plugins and such like. You can run the join in, and you're going to want to make sure all of that works. But the basic application has now been converted to run on App Engine. So now, that was an example, but the most important thing is, how would you do that with your own applications? And so, the whole process is fairly straightforward. There's the App Engine component, there's a PHP component, there's a data storage component. And for this, you create an App Engine application, as Amy described. You have this configuration file called app.yaml that's specific to App Engine. You also have your php.ini that's also got some Google-specific extensions to it. Then on the PHP side, the various things we've seen are you can use the Streams API to make network calls, make use of this URL fetch service that Amy described. Then also